My fiancée slept with my dad the night before our wedding. They thought I'd walk down the aisle anyway, but what I did made the whole family fall apart. The night before my wedding, I couldn't sleep. Everyone was already in their hotel rooms, drunk on champagne and fake congratulations. I was sitting in the dark of our suite, scrolling through playlists for the ceremony, when Megan's phone buzzed on the dresser. Normally, I'd ignore it. We trusted each other, or at least I thought we did. But the notification preview lit up just enough for me to see my dad's name, Robert Clark, and the first 3 words. Still thinking about it felt wrong. Not wrong like an innocent surprise, wrong like the ground shifting under me. My thumb hesitated in midair before I told myself it was nothing, but my gut, it didn't agree. I picked up her phone. No password. Megan always said she had nothing to hide. I opened the messages and scrolled. The first one was enough to stop my breathing. My dad talking about her taste and how soft she was last night. There were photos. I didn't even need to scroll further to know exactly what they'd done. I sat there for maybe a full minute, perfectly still, feeling my own pulse in my ears, a voice gone, my own breathing too loud. The only sound in the room was the faint hum of the minibar. My fiancé, my father. Hours before I was supposed to say I do, the first thing I thought was, this can't be real. People don't actually do this in real life. That's just the kind of nightmare you hear on trashy talk shows. But the timestamps didn't lie. Neither did the photos. She'd sent him a selfie in my bed, my side of the bed, right after I'd gone downstairs to sign paperwork with the efficient. The text above it read, "Wish you were still here. I can still feel your hands." It wasn't just sex, it was intimacy. That destroyed me more than the images. The way she typed to him, the way he typed back, was the same way she'd texted me when we were first dating. I opened the call logs. My dad had called her 7 times in the past 3 days. Always when I was at work or running errands for the wedding. I didn't know what to do with my hands. My chest felt like someone had put a weight on it. For the first time in my life, I actually didn't want to yell or throw something. I wanted to vanish, to take all this knowledge and just disappear. And yet a part of me knew I needed proof, screenshots, backups, something that would make it impossible for either of them to twist the truth later. My dad was a real estate broker. He knew how to make things disappear. I pulled out my own phone and started saving everything. Every message, every photo, every call log, every tiny breadcrumb. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. By the time I was done, it was past 2 in the morning. My chest still hurt, but now my mind was already moving past the shock. I remembered something from my job as a project manager: never confront someone until you've secured every piece of data. People panic when confronted. They delete, they rewrite, they erase. I backed up the screenshots to my cloud, then without even thinking emailed them to my personal non-shared account. But then a thought hit me. If my dad found out I knew, he could spin this like he always did. He was the charismatic one in the family. He'd make it sound like I'd gone crazy before the wedding. That's when I noticed something in the messages my dad had sent Megan, a voice memo. I tapped it and heard his voice, low, almost smug, telling her he could still smell her perfume on his skin. My stomach turned, but at the same time, I knew I was holding gold. Voice data is harder to dispute than text. I downloaded the audio and saved it with the rest. Now I had to decide, do I blow this up in private, or do I let it detonate in front of everyone tomorrow? The idea of walking down that aisle with both of them standing there, smiling like nothing happened, made my skin crawl. But maybe, just maybe, I could turn that aisle into their execution stage. I didn't sleep at all, just stared at the ceiling, listening to Megan's soft, fake breathing beside me, and planned. By sunrise, I had a plan. I wasn't going to run. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to treat this like an operation: collect intel, secure allies, then strike where it hurt most, in front of every single witness at the wedding. First step: confirm the affair beyond any misunderstanding. Defense: I texted Megan from the bathroom, pretending to be half asleep. "Hey babe, I had a dream about you last night." She replied instantly with, "Me too. Wish we could do it again tonight, but not even subtle." I screen recorded the exchange, audio clicks and all. Then I went into my dad's public real estate page. He'd just posted a story from outside our venue in the suit he planned to wear, smiling. The man who'd taught me to tie my first tie was getting dressed to watch me marry the woman he'd slept with less than 24 hours ago. I needed someone else to see this before I went nuclear. Someone who couldn't be swayed by my dad's charm. My mom, Mary, wasn't an option. She'd been Team Robert since before I could talk. So I thought of Mike Harris, my best man since college. Mike had been through my family's manipulations before. He knew how Robert could twist a story. I met Mike in the hotel lobby. The second he saw my face, his smile faded. "John, what's going on? You look like you haven't slept in a week." I pulled him into a quiet corner and showed him the screenshots and the voice memo. His eyes went wide, then narrowed. "Jesus man, this is..." He stopped, looking over my shoulder. I turned. My dad was across the lobby, chatting with the venue manager like he owned the place. His eyes flicked to us. And that was all it took, the kind of look that made people doubt themselves without a word spoken. Mike's voice dropped. Listen, are you sure this isn't a misunderstanding? I mean, that's your dad and Megan. People might read this the wrong way. I felt the floor tilt under me. You think I'm making this up? No, he said, but his tone had changed. I don't want to be in the middle of a family thing hours before your wedding. Just like that, the one guy I trusted to have my back started stepping sideways. Not a full betrayal, but close enough to feel like the floor had given way. I walked away before I said something I'd regret. My best man had just become another liability. Losing Mike hit harder than I wanted to admit. I'd counted on him being my voice if my own got drowned out. Without him, it was just me and my digital evidence, which is why I almost lost it when I checked my cloud backup and saw that the folder of screenshots was gone. Completely deleted. The voice memo too. I stared at the screen like maybe it would reappear if I just blinked enough. But deep down I knew someone had accessed my account. My dad had worked in sales long enough to know every trick to getting into people's devices. That's when the panic really hit. My hands went cold, my vision tunneled, my proof, the thing I'd spent the entire night collecting, was gone. I checked my email backups, same thing, empty somewhere in the building. Megan was probably getting her hair done. My dad was probably shaking hands and telling jokes. And me, I was standing in a bathroom stall, trying not to hyperventilate because I'd just been reset to 0. But there was one place my dad couldn't touch without tipping his hand: my work laptop, still locked in my car from the night before. If anything could save me, it would have to start there. I went to my car like I was just grabbing a charger. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it over the lobby music. The parking lot was still damp from last night's rain, the smell of wet asphalt sharp in the morning air. When I slid into the driver's seat and reached for my laptop bag, my stomach dropped. The zipper was open. I pulled the laptop out and powered it on. The lock screen came up, but the wallpaper had changed. My files gone. Every folder, every backup copy, every photo I'd hidden away just in case wiped clean. I gripped the steering wheel with both hands. It didn't take a genius to figure out who had done it. The only person who'd know exactly what to look for, and exactly how to erase it without leaving a trace, was Robert Clark, my own father. That was it. I was empty-handed. Somewhere in the hotel, a florist was arranging flowers for a wedding that was never going to happen. Guests were sipping miasamas, and I was sitting in my car, staring at a blank desktop screen, realizing that my enemies were in my family, and they had just erased my only ammunition. Back inside, the walls felt closer. The polite hotel lighting suddenly looked harsh. Every face I passed in the hallway seemed to have a question in their eyes: why aren't you with your bride? I avoided the bridal suite, avoided the prep rooms, avoided everyone. I went straight to my own room, locked the door, and sat on the bed trying to figure out if there was any way to salvage this. I thought about Mike, about how fast he'd stepped back when my dad showed up, about how easy it was for Robert to make people doubt me with just a look. For a second, I actually considered going through with the ceremony just so I could destroy them both later, but I knew that was exactly what they were betting on, that I'd swallow my pride and walk down the aisle because the embarrassment of canceling a wedding would be worse than the betrayal. My phone buzzed with a text from Megan. Everything okay? Haven't seen you all morning. I didn't answer. I needed a weapon they couldn't delete. Something physical, something they wouldn't see coming. I was pacing when it hit me. Not a big cinematic light bulb moment, just a small, stubborn thought. A voice: they could delete photos, they could erase files, but they couldn't rewrite something that lived outside their control. And I remembered last month, my dad bragged about how his smartwatch could read his body data, heart rate spikes, sleep patterns, even voice commands, and store it automatically in his health app. Biometric data. If he'd worn that watch during their little midnight meetup, there'd be a spike in his heart rate and a location ping from the hotel. And those readings weren't stored on his phone, they were sent to his online health account, which I knew he barely checked. I grabbed my jacket. If I could get that watch even for a few minutes, I might have proof they couldn't scrub. Something raw, something measurable, something that screamed, this happened here. But I'd need to get close to him without tipping him off, which meant I had to face him before I was ready. I found him in the reception hall, talking to the GD like they were old friends. He was wearing his favorite navy suit, and sure enough, the sleek black smartwatch was on his wrist, catching the light every time he gestured. I forced myself to walk over, keeping my face neutral. Hey Dad, can I borrow you for a minute? Need to talk about the seating chart. He glanced at me, expression unreadable. Now everything's already set. Yeah, but there's a mistake. Just take a look. It's easier if you see it on my laptop. I led him toward a quiet corner where the light was low. My heart was pounding so hard I was afraid he'd hear it. While I pretended to pull up the seating chart, I said, "Oh, by the way, Your watch keeps buzzing. It might be draining the battery before tonight. He looked down at it, frowning. Yeah, this thing's been acting up. He tapped at the screen. That was my opening. Let me see, I had the same model for a while. Think I know the fix. He hesitated, then slipped it off and handed it to me. I could feel his eyes on me. That I kept my tone casual as I checked the settings. What I was really doing was pairing it to my phone in the background, sysning the last 72 hours of data. It took less than a minute to transfer, but it felt like an hour. Every time someone walked by, my shoulders tensed. The progress bar crawled like it knew my entire plan depended on it. Finally, it pinged sync complete. I handed the watch back. Try it now, should stop buzzing so much. He slipped it back on, none the wiser. In the restroom, I opened the health app on my phone. My stomach flipped. The night before, from 11:42 p.m. to 12:19 p.m., his heart rate spiked to 180 beats per minute. Gibbs location hotel bridal suite. Even better, there was a recorded snippet from the watch's voice command feature, him laughing and saying, "Lock the door." The audio was faint, but clear enough to identify his voice. It wasn't the kind of explicit proof that would make headlines, but it was physical, time-stamped, and impossible to accidentally explain away. Dang, Chung Cap 1 secured. Now all I needed was the perfect moment to use it. The wedding was set for 4 p.m. That gave me just under 5 hours to turn biometric blips into a weapon. I retreated to my room, locked the door, and copied everything to multiple places: my work email, a private cloud, and a USB drive I hid inside my shoe. No way was I letting history repeat itself. Then I called Rebecca Stone, a friend of a friend, and an attorney who owed me a favor after I'd helped her firm with a massive project last year. "John, you do realize it's your wedding day, right?" she said when she picked up. "Not anymore," I told her. "I need you here today, and I need you to bring something with legal weight." She didn't ask for details, just told me she'd be there in an hour. The plan was simple. When the officiant asked if anyone had objections, I wouldn't say a word. I'd let Rebecca stand and read the statement herself, with the biometric data ready to show anyone who wanted proof. No yelling, no drama from me, just facts, delivered like a clean bullet to the head of their perfect facade. And when the silence hit, that heavy, awkward silence people can't forget, I'd let them feel exactly what they'd tried to make me feel. By 3:30, guests were filling the chairs under the white canopy, the smell of fresh roses, mixed with the faint salt of the ocean breeze. I stood near the front, hands in my pockets, eyes fixed on nothing. Rebecca arrived right on time, dressed in a simple navy suit, holding a slim folder. She gave me a quick nod, no smile, and took a seat near the aisle. Across the crowd, I caught sight of Megan. She was glowing in her lace gown, bouquet clutched like it might float away. She met my eyes for a fraction of a second, then looked past me as if I were just part of the decor. My dad, in his perfect suit, was talking to my mother like they were the hosts of the year. His watch caught the light again, and for a split second, I felt a strange satisfaction knowing it had betrayed him. The officiant cleared his throat. "Please rise." Music started. I kept my breathing steady, but my palms were damp. Halfway through the ceremony, I saw Robert glance at me with that same subtle warning look he'd used on Mike in the lobby. Like he knew something was about to happen. Rebecca leaned forward slightly, her hand on the folder in her lap. We'd rehearsed it. She'd stand when the officiant asked for objections, introduce herself as legal counsel, and present the biometric data to anyone who questioned her. But just before that moment came, Janet, the wedding coordinator, appeared at my side. Her voice was low, urgent. "John, there's been a mix-up with the vendor payments. Can you step aside for just a minute?" It was a lie. I could hear it in the too bright tone. She was stalling me. I glanced past her and saw my dad looking directly at us, a faint smile on his face. He'd sent her. I didn't move. "They can wait," I said, eyes back on the officiant. My jaw was locked so tight it hurt. Janet hesitated and then walked away, her phone already at her ear. Should anyone here present know of any reason that this couple should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace. The words hung in the air like a drawn bowstring. My pulse hammered in my throat. I didn't speak. Instead, I turned my head slowly toward Rebecca. The silence stretched, thick enough that people started shifting in their seats. Then she stood calm and deliberate, folder in hand. "I have an objection," she said clearly. No raised voice, no theatrics, just a steady tone that cut through the afternoon air. Every head turned. Megan's smile froze. Robert's jaw tightened. Rebecca opened the folder. "I represent the groom. I have evidence that, less than 24 hours ago, the bride engaged in intimate relations with the groom's father. This is supported by time-stamped biometric data from a wearable device and corroborating audio from the device's voice command log." The collective gasp was everything I'd imagined. I kept my eyes forward, letting the silence do the work. It was the kind of silence that changes how people see you forever. Rebecca didn't rush. She walked up the aisle like she was in a courtroom, not a wedding. At the front, she turned to face the guests, opening the folder wide so the first rows could see the printed screenshots. This, she said, tapping the top page, is the heart rate log from Robert Clark's smartwatch, synced automatically to his cloud account. Note the spike between 11:42 p.m. and 12:19 a.m. in the bridal suite. This, she flipped to the next page, is the Gibbs trace from the same period, placing him at that location, and here, she held up a small recorder, is an audio clip captured by the device's voice command feature. The voice is unmistakably Mr. Clark's, saying, "Lock the door." A ripple of shock moved through the crowd. Someone in the back muttered, "Oh my God." I didn't move, didn't smile. The silence after she stopped speaking was heavier than any shouting could have been. Robert was the first to break. "This is absurd," he said, standing halfway, his voice full of manufactured outrage. "This is some kind of tech glitch, a misreading. I was helping Megan with a seating issue. Nothing more." Megan jumped in, her voice shaking. "John, please, you know I love you. This is your father twisting something innocent." Rebecca raised an eyebrow. "Innocent?" At midnight, in the bridal suite, with a locked door, the guests were frozen between pity, shock, and the awkward need to not look at me. My mother had her hand over her mouth, eyes darting between Robert and Megan like she was watching a slow-motion car crash. I could feel it. They were trying to muddy the water. The biometric proof was strong, but not unbreakable if they managed to spin it. That's when my pulse kicked up again. Not from panic, but from the smallest thread of memory. I remembered Robert bragging at dinner a month ago about his new smart home security system at the lake house. "It even records door lock history," he'd said, "so I know exactly when and how long every door's been opened." And I knew they's been at that lake house together the weekend before. If the system worked like he said, there would be logs time-stamped, location verified, from a third-party server showing him and Megan alone inside for hours. That was my bang chum cap too. Independent, unalterable. I pulled my phone out slowly, stepping toward Rebecca, and whispered, "We're not done." The lake house logs his account password is my mom's birthday backwards plus gate. He used it for years. She didn't hesitate. Slipped her own phone from her pocket. Fingers moving fast. Within seconds, she had the dashboard open. Her eyes widened. "Got it," she whispered. "Door opened at 11:40 p.m., locked again at 12:20 a.m. Same pattern last weekend. Both logs tagged to Robert's personal keycard." She looked at me like we'd just loaded the last bullet in the chamber. Rebecca didn't wait for me to tell her when. She stepped forward again, turning so the guests and the officiant could see her phone screen. "In addition to the biometric data from Mr. Clark's smartwatch," she said evenly, "we now have independent security logs from his lake house. These logs are maintained by a third-party security company and cannot be altered by the user." She tapped the screen, zooming in so the front row could see. On the night in question, Mr. Clark's personal keycard unlocked the bridal suite door at 11:40 p.m., locked it again at 12:20 a.m., and recorded multiple interior motion events during that time. The weekend prior, the same keycard was used to access the lake house, where it remained active for 4 hours with no other registered users present. A low murmur ran through the crowd. I could see it on their faces, the shift from "maybe this is a misunderstanding" to "oh, this is real." Robert's face went pale, but he still tried. "Those logs don't prove anything except that I was in a room. I could have been fixing something." Rebecca didn't raise her voice. "Fixing something with the door locked and your heart rate at 180 beats per minute, while issuing a voice command to lock the door." She let the words hang in the air. The silence after was a punchline no one laughed at. Megan's eyes darted between Robert and me, searching for an opening that wasn't there. Finally she spoke, her voice small. "John, please, can we just talk about this privately?" I shook my head. "You two made this public the second you decided to do it the night before my wedding." The guests weren't looking at me anymore, they were looking at them, and the weight of that attention was crushing. I didn't need to say anything else. I'd already decided silence was my final weapon. I stepped back, letting Rebecca close the folder and hand the phone to the officiant for the record. The hum of whispers in the crowd filled the space. Robert and Megan couldn't. Their perfect image had just flatlined in real time, right in front of everyone they'd wanted to impress. The biometric data had spoken when my own voice couldn't. The silence after each fact landed harder than any shouting match could have. And in that quiet, I felt my own pulse steady for the first time since the night before. The officiant cleared his throat. "Given the circumstances, I believe the ceremony cannot proceed." I turned and walked away, leaving them standing there. No dramatic exit. No looking back, just the sound of my own footsteps, each one lighter than the last. The moment I stepped outside the canopy, the sound changed. Inside had been gasps and whispers. Outside was just open air, the crash of waves and my own breathing. I didn't run. I walked across the lawn toward the parking lot, hearing bits of the chaos behind me, the officiant's voice trying to calm people, my mother calling after me. chairs scraping as guests shifted uncomfortably. Rebecca caught up to me halfway. "You good?" she asked. Still holding the folder. "I'm better than I've been in 24 hours, I said. And it was true, not good, not happy, but steady. From the corner of my eye, I saw Robert step into the sunlight. Megan was just behind him, her gown catching on the grass. A few guests followed, either to offer comfort or to satisfy curiosity. I didn't stop to see which. Rebecca opened her car door. "Get in, you don't need to be here for whatever they try next." By that evening, my phone was buzzing non-stop messages from guests, relatives, and people I haven't spoken to in years. Some were supportive, some were nosy. A few were clearly fishing for gossip to post online. It didn't take long for the local real estate forums to light up with threads about Robert Clark storming out of his own son's wedding. Megan's name popped up on a private Facebook group for bridal drama within hours. Screenshots of her texts to my dad attached for all to see. By the next morning, Robert had disabled comments on his business page. Megan's Instagram went private. My mother left me a voicemail full of the usual mix, half pleading, half guilt-tripping, but there was no anger this time, just a kind of brittle sadness. I didn't respond. Let the silence work on them the way it had worked on me all my life. 2 weeks later, I was sitting in a quiet cafe, the drive with all the backups still in my jacket pocket. Not because I needed it anymore, the damage was done, but because it reminded me what I'd fought through. Rebecca had sent me an email. "They won't contest anything. I think they know they've lost." Mike reached out, too. He admitted he shouldn't have believed me from the start. I told him I wasn't ready to talk about it, but maybe someday. Trust isn't something you just patch back together because someone says my bad. The best part, I didn't feel like I'd been left with nothing. The voice that had been stolen from me first by shock, then by doubt, had come back. The silence I once hated had become my sharpest tool, and the biometric data, the most impersonal thing in the world, had ended up being the most personal proof I could ever have. I walked out of that cafe into a cold, bright afternoon, my breath fogging in the air. No wedding ring, no fractured half-life with people who didn't value me, just open space ahead, and my own footsteps to fill it. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe to check out more stories on my channel.